Hello, everyone, and welcome to another lore episode on some of the Heavensward content. Like I said in the tag, this will include several spoilers about Heavensward thing because you can't really talk about Azys La without going into some of the major threads of that storyline. So just be aware that that is a thing. Um, So I am situated at the very, very heart of Azys La. Now, Azys La is a city of sorts. It's one of the last remnants of the Allagans that we have that remained with any kind of veracity or anything like that. Um, Azys La, part of the big reason for that is because it is protected by an ethereochemical field. So everything around the sky is green and it seems kind of smoggy and polluted. It's because it's protected by a magical field. So that only can be accessed within certain threads and stuff. Um, and of course, during the story of Heavensward, we are in pursuit of the Pope, the Archbishop, uh, the yeah, Theoden. Um, and he is trying to resurrect the power that is hidden deep within Azys La. Now, he doesn't know all of the constraints of that because he doesn't realize that there were literally three primals sleeping within this realm. He just knew that there was a power to summon a primal of some sort, and that he could harness that power so that he could bring justice and rule eternally and so on and so forth for his people. And so we are in pursuit of him, and this is where some of the last confrontations of the entire Heavensward expansion happen. But there's also a lot of just in general storylines that intersect here. Like for example, there is, if you do the summoner quest, there is some lore that has a lot of implications that takes you through Azys La because the summoner job was a carryover from the Alligans. They were went in all of their research into aether and ethereal stuff and all of their advances. Now, Azys La is also a floating. I'm not even entirely sure how entirely to describe it. It's the size of a city. It's the size of any of the three city states, but it is also like on its own. It's very quiet. There's nothing left of the researchers who used to exist there. There's no even like tomes or nothing. There's literally just it is crawling with their test subjects and some of those that were sealed away long, long, long ago. Now, and some of those that do power the actual facility, and at the very, very, very heart of it is the Warring Triad. Now, the Warring Triad are specifically three primal entities that were held captive, and their summoners essentially chained so that they could be used to summon the primal on a whim and to aid in their distress. And the primal is encased. And there's three of them, the Warring Triad, and those become major trials that are completely optional. They're very, very, very fun with lots of lore to their own. And those are remnants of a continent called Mericidia. Now, Mericidia is a continent that we have not yet been to in any way. We don't even know if it exists anymore. It did exist way back in the time of ancient Allegan, but again, that's been several calamities later. it's possible that it doesn't even exist anymore. But we do know it was to the south, much, much farther south than even the southeast where Authard is and the Ruby Sea. We know some of the lore, if you read some of the lore tabs for some of the cards, we know what some of the people of Mericidia were. We know, for example, there were a tree-like species that summoned, that used the god Sephiroth, who was one of the Warring Triad, who was the first of the three that was contained of the Mericidian gods. And then the goddess was the arbiter of good and evil, balance, etc., etc. And she was revered by a bunch of Gnostics and stuff. And then the final group that we do know were Zervan's people were a bunch of centaur-like people. And you actually do, as you're fighting some of the centaurs, as you're fighting Zervan, he does summon some of his followers that are centaur-like people. But again, that's the extent of what we do know about Mericidia. If you read some of the lore stuff about the cards, we've never actually seen any living Mericidians. We've never seen any artifacts of Mericidia. We don't know exactly where it is geographically, other than it's far, far to the south. And we know when we see some of the maps in the Stormblood expansion that it doesn't even show up on the map. So it must have, if it still exists as a continent, that it must be way, 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 very, very, very far to the south. Um, and so these are relics here, and there are also researches into sustaining life and life forms and creation. And so this is where there's like research facilities for etherical, comical creatures like the Sphinx that that runs around here as guardians of the flagship, which is the very heart of the research facility city. And there's also where the Warring Triad are, and their extreme versions of the Warring Triad. And then further to the southeast is a still living dragon. One of the very few living dragons that we encounter, and we do encounter them in the story, and it's a very, very sad story. See, close to the end of the third astral era, which is right around the time of the Allegan Empire. The Allegan Empire, if the time in the lore is to believe the Allegan Empire existed during that era, and then it came to a crashing close, and then the start of the fourth. There might have been a little bit of overlap because it's hard to tell with like exactly with calamities and stuff and how that overlaps. But yes, that is basically during that time, and we do know that Azys La was founded during the golden age of the Allegan Empire. So probably 200-300 years before things started declining. Again, it's completely estimatable, it's completely relative. We know it existed before the Crystal Tower because of some of the lore some of the lore tabs and everything. The Crystal Tower at its peak was built toward the end of that society, and it was never completed. Whereas Azys La was, it was a completed venture where they were using, and that's where they were perfecting a lot of their weapons and their floating materials and so on and so forth. And so to the southeast is a living dragon that has been held captive for well over for thousands and thousands of years, because it's been held captive since the middle of the third astral era. if the time scales are, it's at least been held captive for 7,000 years, probably more than that. Um, so yeah, and so Tiamat is the dragon that has been held, and Tiamat is one of the oldest of Midgardsormr's brood. Midgardsormr is the father of all dragons. Midgardsormr, he um and he gave life to some of the greatest of worms. Nidhogg was one of them. Racevagar was another. Um, Tiamat was another. Bahamut was another. Those are named dragons that were some of the most powerful of all things. Now, at that time, during the subjugation of Myrcidia and the control and everything, Tiamat was imprisoned. Now, in her struggle, she saw her brother captured and slain by the Allagans. And in her fervent wish for retribution and everything like that, she learned the dark arts of summoning. And she was able to summon back her brother, not realizing that the Allagans knew that she was probably going to do that and had a way to counteract that, specifically in place. And so her brother became the Dread Primal Bahamut, and that goes into that whole storyline, which that's deserving of a whole other video about Bahamut and the final coil and everything like that. But Tiamat was responsible for summoning her brother back, and she regrets that, and she has been regretting that for thousands and thousands of years. And she has been by herself, concealed within Azys La, no way of ever escaping. Her energy sapped, her ether drawn from her on a regular basis from these constructs. Her fate is sealed. There's nothing you can do. Nothing even the most powerful Warrior of Light can't. The Warrior of Light can't do anything to save Tiamat. Tiamat's fate is determined. But she wants you to carry on this vision for peace that you actually are suing for, and that's the whole thing, that you can maybe actually end the Dragon Song War that has been raging for 1,000 years and bring harmony and peace to Ishgard and its peoples, including the dragons, and the deep secret there. And of course, some of the established powers that be don't want that, because peace doesn't give power to the church, and so on and so forth. And so, and of course you have Ascian plans, and because of course where the Ascians go, they're trying to sow discord and all sorts of other chaos. So this research facility also has some exclusively rare materials like adamantite, which is a very, very annoying time node that you can only find there. There's also some relic weapon quests that take you to Azys La, and those are specifically for the Heavensward, which have some lore to them. I have not finished a storyline yet for that, because it's a fairly involved quest line, but there will be a video once I have finished it and had some stuff to talk about with that. There's also, it's just kind of a general hub for a lot of storylines. A lot of storylines take you through there, including the Ixali quest line, some of the other beast tribes from around Reborn, eventually take you through Heavensward stuff. Yeah, and even some of the Vanu Vanu stuff, some of the other beast tribes around Azys La do as well. And more or less, that's kind of a nice little short snippet video, highlighting it a bit, talking about some of the story, and I will do a little bit more of a deep dive as well later on about, like, specifically some of the warring tribes themselves, Bismarck, some of the primals, because there's some detailed lore specifically about them that you may have missed. So I think for that, that's a good starter, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.